Movie Club Strikes Back, it's me Jenny, and this week's pick, well, belated pick for week 10, which I know was a while ago, was Fight Club, chosen by the fantastic Cristina M. And I bought it on DVD because I've never watched this film before, and I know it's a classic and I want to do it justice. And my quick review is, it is a fantastic, brilliant classic, and I would 100% recommend it if you are an adult, because it is brilliant. It's very well handled, but if you are of a squeamish temperament or quite young, there is some graphic violence in this, there is some sexual content, there's some rude language, and there are some very dark societal themes which some people might find a bit uncomfortable. That being said, it is a fantastic film, and I am very frustrated with myself in a way that the advertising campaign for this is so very well handled. The concept that every single person knows the saying, the first rule of Fight Club is you do not talk about Fight Club. Which means that 15 years after this film was made, I wasn't spoiled until 2 months ago when I watched a non-spoiler alerted video, and it featured one aspect, a very important aspect of this film, being removed. And it was a very well edited video, but it did spoil the entire movie for me, particularly that very big third act reveal, which I found very frustrating. But that being said, the rest of the advertising campaign really held up because the trailers make this film look like a very light-hearted sort of heist fight movie, and it's not really that. It's much more of a commentary on society and midlife crisis, particularly maybe aimed at the more male side of this, but there are definitely aspects that can be enjoyed by a female, and to say that it's just a bro movie is very, very unfair, because this is a very good commentary on society in general. So overall, I did enjoy this film. There's some excellent direction and editing in this, particularly the first sequence where we're going through the brain gets followed through with a lot of other animated sequences which go through certain buildings and certain environments in a very sort of like you're imagining it sort of way, like if you were to process, or at least how I sometimes think about if I'm trying to remember if there's something missing from a space, I'll go through the space in my mind. And it's very good at putting you in the mindset of the main character. Similarly, there's a lot of just great editing things. It's got a lot of jumping forward and back in time, some breaks into fantasy, which really help set you in the mindset of an unreliable narrator. Very much like Memento, where you get introduced to your main character who you know is unreliable. And yet you're going with the story through their perspective, so that even when things become unusual or things don't make sense, you're still with this main character. So you can break into moments of fantasy, you can really jump back and forward in time and correct things that didn't make sense before. And it just works. It's very, very interestingly handled. The acting throughout is phenomenal. Edward Norton, Helena Bonham Carter and Brad Pitt, absolutely fantastic in this film. The characters are so interesting and complex, particularly the relationship between the two boys in this is brilliantly handled. And definitely once you get past the reveal in the third act, rewatching this is a very interesting experience, particularly making Helena Bonham Carter's character a lot more relatable. You really understand what she's going through on a much greater level. There's a lot of very interesting subliminal stuff which I did because I was spoiled, noticed very early on. There's a couple of blips and a couple of other things that I really noticed, and I was like, ooh, I know where this is going, which is kind of both an advantage and a disadvantage of being spoiled. I think definitely if you've watched this once, watch it twice, because that's when you really get a feeling for what's going on. Overall, it's a very interesting film. What I like about this is in the DVD it comes with this little guidebook. In the guidebook it has negative reactions from all sorts of, you know, reviewers. And it's a very interesting read because having experienced this film, I definitely found it interesting and enjoyable, but it's definitely worth seeing how people at the time responded to this film. And there's a lot of very negative responses, like there's I think one quote that says that Fight Club is to intelligent men what romance novels are to intelligent women, which is a really interesting thought, and I'll be really interested to see how other people react to this film, because it does make some very broad comments about how men feel disjointed in current society. Now, they don't really have that same level of expression that they would have done if they're in a more visceral level of life. And it's a very interesting concept. It's not really something that I thought of a lot. And it's good to see it kind of put together in this film. Overall, it's very interesting, very well directed, and really nice, intelligent film in its own little way, although I think a lot of people could react to this film in very, very different ways. And that's my main review. Before I go to the next section, spoiler alert, if you have not seen this film, stop watching this video. Feel free to like and comment and subscribe and all of those things, but stop watching this video. Okay, now everyone's gone. The one thing that I found really problematic with the third act reveal, that Tyler Duncan does not exist, he's internal thought process, is there's a couple of sequences that it really does make sense. Like, you can imagine the narrator really slipping into this other character, and there's a couple of really nice subtle hints throughout that they are one and the same. I really noticed, because I had been spoiled, the phone booth where he calls, he has no response, and then a character calls back. And there is a couple of little subtle things, like on the phone it has written cannot receive calls. Little things like that. It's really, really well handled. There's also things like the bar of soap, or the soap company has got two angels facing each other, and it's a nice Gemini sort of theme. That being said, there was a couple of points where it felt really, really awkward, particularly the original bar fight sequence, which was the clip that I watched with Tyler Dunn being edited out. And we have seen how this character beats himself up. You see him in the office with his boss beating himself up, and it's a very weird, funny sort of sequence. But I find it very hard to believe that when the boys start this fight club and they see Edward Norton's character, the narrator, having his fight, that they would then want to join into the fight club. I think it feels very odd that they would come out of a bar and see a guy beating on himself and then want to join his club. It just felt like a very big plot hole to me, that somehow they would be so desperate to fight or to be physical, that seeing someone beating up themselves would want them to join and create a fight club, rather than thinking, this guy's crazy, let's carry on. And it was just one of the things that kind of spoiled this movie for me, when I try and take Tyler Dunn out of a sequence. Sometimes it makes sense. Sometimes, like, okay, this sequence is inside his head, this sequence is him inside another character's shoes, or this is from a different perspective. But there's a couple of sequences where it felt like it wouldn't have worked. But yeah, that was the only problem I really had with this film. As I said, there's a lot of different opinions about this film that are very interesting and definitely worth checking out. If you can buy the DVD, I would recommend reading through this booklet, because it's got so many different opinions and so many different viewpoints. And that is probably one of the best things about this film, that it gets people thinking about how they feel about society, and how they react to this sort of scenario. There's definitely some post-2012 feelings that I think a lot of Americans might be uncomfortable with, particularly the last moment, where it's really sort of a hero's cathartic moment, but I think to a modern audience it might feel a little bit uncomfortable. I'll be interested to hear your opinions. Feel free to comment. Please don't spoil people in the comments. If you do want to spoil people or discuss in more depth, send me a private message or something. But please no spoilers in the comments, or like do it in a very roundabout way and I will respond in a roundabout way. There we go. I will be catching up on with the rest of my reviews in the next 24 hours, and I will see you guys all very soon. Bye guys!